to try to reinvigorate patriotism in the truest sense of the word, right? And we say that is to do things for your countrymen without expecting anything in return. Be the right thing because it's the right thing and no one's looking. That's what we try to teach our children. That's what we try to live by. That's why the NineLine Foundation, we do help severely wounded veterans by building wheelchair accessible homes. And we also have built dozens of tiny homes for homeless veterans and work with other charities. We have no paid employees. Everything is volunteer. That way any dollar that comes in goes directly toward our initiatives.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. We have a really special guest. His name is Tyler Merritt. He is the CEO of NineLine Apparel, part of the NineLine Foundation. He's a retired captain, a West Point graduate, and a small business owner who is really helping veterans. And we got into some areas that I didn't expect to get into. And you're going to love this guy and this conversation. Let me just read you something about him. Who better to assist our wounded veterans and their families in dire need of help than an American soldier? That is Tyler Merritt, and he's built a business on this, and he has a foundation. And this is the first of many conversations we'll be having with Tyler. This is a voice you need to hear. This is the kind of voice that people in power, and I'm not talking about the government, I'm talking about people in business like pharma and clothing and, that kind of industry don't want you to hear from. We're going to hear from him more than once. This is part one. Tyler Merritt up next. Tyler, it is great to meet you. This is the first time we've met. We're meeting virtually, and we've already discovered we have something in common about South America. We'll get into that in a minute. You just got back from getting stem cell treatments, and this is fascinating to me. And you dropped that into the conversation. And I want to get into it because you had to go to Colombia to get this done, South America. Is this not available to you in the United States? Let me read you a couple of testimonials about Sleep Cream, a product that I use, and I've been telling you how great it works for me. But don't just take it from me. Lorraine E. says, this stuff is great. I fall asleep quickly. And even when I wake up in the middle of the night, I have no midnight anxiety and fall asleep again. Thank you for a terrific product. Don't change a thing. Garland says, great product and superior customer service. That's just a couple of things you can expect from Sleep Cream. Sleep, CREME.com. Go there, use the code GAMEDAY for my listeners, GAMEDAY, to get free standard shipping on your first order. And this product is guaranteed. Will make arrangements if it doesn't work for you. But here's what I did. I thought CBD in a topical cream that you kind of put on your arms at bedtime. Really? Some people put it on the bottoms of their feet. I put it on the insides of my forearms and elbows. It is not a drug. It is not a pill. It comes in a little bottle and you put it on and all of a sudden your body is relaxed and you're able to go to sleep. Check them out at sleepcream.com, sleep, CREME.com. Don't forget that code GAMEDAY at checkout to get that free standard shipping on your first order. Like I said, if you try it and it doesn't work for you, they got you covered. They will guarantee your satisfaction. So just know that. Sleepcream.com, sleep, CREME.com. If you're ready for your best night's sleep, sleepcream.com, code GAMEDAY. You had to go to Colombia to get this done, South America. Is this not available to you in the United States?
No, it's not. It's actually illegal in the United States to do what I did. It's pretty shameful. If I were to say so, I've got a lot of friends, veterans, athletes that go down to Medellin and go to these facilities because it's not available here, at the same level. We have this selective outrage in this country. This practice is immoral, to take embryonic stem cells and to grow them in the laboratory and introduce them into injured areas of your body. But my body's taken a lot of abuse over the years. I was an athlete in college. In the military and special operations, they demand a lot on your body. The less than optimal helicopter landings, contributed to back and knee issues. to the point where I couldn't sleep and function without taking painkillers. No comfortable position, sitting, standing, lying down. And a lot of people get addicted to these things. I don't enjoy taking pain relief, but it's been about a week, and I've no need and absolutely no desire to go back to where I was feeling, and I truly do feel like a new person. So I am working, with friends like Doug Collins, the VA, and other individuals to try to promote these things for veterans to find relief in things other than a bottle and pain relief meds. And hopefully one day we'll wake up and see that, I feel that these decisions are driven by interest groups and greed. There's a big push in the pharmaceutical community to make sure that these things are never introduced here because they can rejuvenate and reheal. And why do that? One-time treatment when you can give someone painkillers for the rest of their life.
You know what? That's remarkable. And I wonder if with RFK Jr. in HHS, if you feel as though there is you talked about Doug Collins, he's a mutual friend of ours, Secretary of the VA, and others in this cabinet that might be able to, because it sounds like what you're saying is pharmacy, big pharma's in it. I can totally see that. And I'm guessing that they lean into this idea that using stem cells promotes, goes against the pro-life coalition. And I think they're probably using that to their advantage. Is that fair to assume?
I think they're going to come up with whatever narrative of the day, that whatever selective outrage that they could create to show that there's a moral impact to taking placentas, to taking things that are donated, by individuals who just recently gave birth. That's where the embryonic cells are coming from, and then the process of growing and multiplying them in a laboratory. There is the groups and organizations that have pushed this idea that it's morally reprehensible. Yet we need to continue to fund things like abortions. So that's why I call it selective outrage. It's your constitutional right to be able to murder an unborn fetus. I'm a male, so I'm not allowed to have an opinion. I'd say if we have this same level of selective outrage of a desire and a need to, kill an unborn child, I have a selective outrage that things that are donated, from people post birth to help another individual, donating umbilical cords to this science helps people like me. Veterans who beaten and battered their bodies for decades.
It's interesting. There's a company called Cord Blood Registry, and I used them after I had my son, and you can keep, these cells stored in case something ever happens to that child or someone biologically related to that child for use. Okay, if I decided I wanted to donate those instead to a veterans group, that shouldn't I be able to do that?
There's enough people that have this selective outrage triggered to jump up and down, and there's enough influence and money to provide funding to people's reelection campaigns, interest groups that convince the individuals who can change the laws that it can't be changed, that it should not be changed. And I think that's why the disruptors, the RFKs that are coming and saying, rejuvenative therapy and alternative therapies that get you off of opioids, which is an absolute travesty. You ever seen how blood runs go through that addiction? And to heal my leg, I had a slight tear in my ACL. The protocol here was giving me here's physical therapy, then we're going to do surgery, then we're going to do lots of painkillers before and after, and then more physical therapy, right? And then I go down to South America, and I, use stem cells, and obviously if it's a complete tear, you need surgery. But for slight tears and for other things, chronic injuries, there's I used to myself, where I could barely walk around here last 2 weeks ago, and I'm walking up and down stairs, no problem.
It's remarkable. I never expected this conversation to go in this direction, but I'm really, really glad that it has. And you've given me ideas for future podcast episodes because this is a fascinating topic. It's important. And there are so many layers, like you said. I mean, we've got people ODing on these drugs and, big pharma involved. And this could be such a simple way and effective. So this is going to be interesting to watch with RFK Jr. in there and his group. Let's move on to how you got so broken. We know that you're a veteran. Let me dig a little first layer beyond that. What made you want to serve?
Yeah. I think it would go back to my grandfather. Right? He served in World War II. He was not of age. He ended up going to the beaches of Iwo Jima at the age of 17. I believe he turned 18 in a foxhole after being shot in the knee and his helmet. And that's an individual who died at a young age. But he is very influential in my decision making. I wanted to go to West Point and wanted to serve our nation. And from there, I guess you could say indoctrinated into the military way of life of helping protect those who can't protect themselves. Right, and that's what we want to teach our children: is that if you have the ability to help people, then you should. Right? If not me, then who? Then when? If not me, then who? If not now, then when? I believe they're the same. And I had the honor and privilege to serve for over a decade with some of the most elite forces in our military as a member of the Special Operations Community. And it was extremely rewarding to bring justice to people like Bin Laden and other horrible human beings of the world that need to be eradicated. And people like my friends are willing to put their lives on the line. And it's obviously been a huge part of myself and my identity. And when I can no longer serve, I'm medically retired, but trying to find that sense of purpose again is really what I've been focused on since then. How to give back to the community, how to still maintain that relationship with the community. And it's really the set an example for my children, just like my grandfather set an example for me.
I think that a lot of people, I know personally, just anecdotally, people who wished they had served, who wish they could serve, who are afraid, like they really feel patriotic and they want to do something, but the physical fear is real for them. What would you say to a young person today who's considering service and is a little scared?
It's perfectly normal. I think I was naive and I was very excited to get overseas and deploy and quit like training these 4 years at West Point, a year and a half at flight school, flying Apache and basically flying tanks. I'm very excited to go do what I'm trained to do. And then when you're in those situations and in the first weeks, it's on the job and bullets are flying and people are dying, it's very trying. It tested me. And I remember some of those engagements that seemed like they went on for hours, but in reality they were 90 seconds. And I think it's when you put your mind to just being that subject matter expert, to learning your craft, learning your trade, as a professional of arms. Along the way, you start building that confidence, right? So I started the military not confident. I didn't understand anything about the military. And the more that I did additional training and got to meet some of my idols and Medal of Honor recipients, people who've been there and done these incredible things when bullets are flying. Right? It gave me the sense of confidence that other individuals have been in a situation. When I do find myself in a situation, the training will take over and I'll take action. And now I can see those videos now, and even though I know my heart was pumping, my voice was calm. We were just focused on doing my job. If someone's shooting at me, let's return fire more effectively. And I think that's really what I would tell people, is that it's normal to be scared. What you do with that fear and overcoming that fear, that's really the brave thing. I think most adult men, they want to be brave. But they're terrified of that test. But to train properly in the right environments, you're going to be fine.
I think in America, there's been an interesting relationship with the military and between the military and um, the peaceniks, I'll call them. And I mean that in the nicest sense, people who believe that peace is possible. But there's been evil in the world, Tyler, from the beginning of time, and there will always be evil. We see it daily around us. We're just trying to counter the evil. And I think that there are people who believe that evil can somehow be talked out of a person or, influenced out of a person. I wonder if you could give me your take on what evils people maybe just aren't aware of.
I think what you're more or less getting at is the naivety of individuals who live in this bubble. I was born in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is about as far away from any military organization I can think of. There's a civil military divide. There is this group of individuals, a lot of them decision makers, that haven't left this bubble, right? So if you go to outside your comfort zone, I've spent a lot of my time in Iraq, Afghanistan, South America, in horrible countries, in between. And I could say that you have countries that indoctrinate people from the early age. Individuals who can't read, were being told by an imam, a religious leader, this book that you can't read. It's the Quran. It says go kill Americans. America wasn't in existence time before. And then you'll be rewarded, right? And your family will be rewarded. You go and see some of these Hamas camps, right? And some journalists that have gone in to see how they create martyrs out of individuals who will blow up buses in the middle of England, right? And then they'll have their mural with this female on the wall. I don't want to mention their names. Give them credit, and that's what these children are seeing. That they hope one day to grow up and be a martyr. They hope one day to be able to please their religious leader by hurting themselves and hurting others to kill the Jewish infidels or whoever it is that they seem hell bent on killing at all costs, women and children. I don't think you can understand that until you go to these countries, right? And I know that me and my friends when Russia initially invaded Ukraine. Chad Rogenshaw's written a great book. It's one of my good buddies that I took some friendship over there. And when you go and see the atrocities of what the Wagner Group would do, they're indiscriminate murdering of women and children to have these sports earth campaigns and to scare and intimidate the Ukrainians. That's pure evil. You can't talk to them. You have to kill them. You have to send my friends who are willing to do bad things to bad people, and you have to understand that we're well past the education. You might be able to do that with the younger generations, right? When we were in Afghanistan and we were, women were able to go to school and we were able to teach young boys that to treat women with respect. That you can't stone them to death because they were raped forcibly by another man, right? These are things where you can, if you start at a young age and you start educating, groups of individuals, you can eventually, breed it out, right? My grandfather on my mother's side is no longer with us. He's extremely racist man, right? It was his upbringing. When I bring some of my African friends home from college, from West Point, he would didn't mean to. They said, "Well, hey, Tyler, how's your blank friend?" I'm like, "Well, his name's Jason, and they don't prefer to be called colored or all the other terms that you use." And it's my mother was a hippie, right? And I travel all around the United States. I've seen very little instances of racism. I think we've bred this out over the years, and you have to do that in these other countries, right? You have to try to encourage and create an environment for the younger generations in Afghanistan, to have a different opinion, right? Not just believe the individual who can read and who's telling you, you can't read, but this is what the Quran says, right? And education will fix all of those things. And Ukraine, you have Channel 1 from Russia, and then on our side, you have Fox and CNN. So you can't really trust those things until you're there on the ground, and you can see, these are bad, evil students, and there's no talking to them.
And even all the education in the world and influencing and generations, there will always be a strain of evil somewhere, and it leads to these awful, awful things happening worldwide. That I am so grateful to our military. I am as a kid, I remember being afraid. The nuclear war that could come, and my dad would say peace through strength. He'd repeat Reagan, and I understand that now, and certainly am teaching that to my own kids. Tyler, I'm wondering if I should call you Captain, but I think you're a guy that wants to be called Tyler.
You're correct.
All right. What is the NineLine Foundation?
Sure. NineLine Apparel was started, when I was still active in the military. I was making things in my garage for special operations groups. We didn't really like the materials coming in from other countries. We set out to make some cut and sew operations here in the United States. If we needed, we would make it here. We started on a small scale. We've obviously scaled upwards in the last 12, 13 years. In this beautiful facility, hundreds of employees. And along the way, I had individual friends who'd, gone to Afghanistan with, both arms, both legs, coming back with two fingers. And we wanted to be there for them. So in the military, NineLine is a call for help, right? So as a helicopter guy, I flew Apaches, and I went to special operations flying Blackhawks. Whether someone's taking fire and they need an Apache to come in and help them. Or someone's been injured on a battlefield and they need a Blackhawk to pull them off. So the NineLine is like the stress call. It gives me, the pilot, the information I need to get my friends off the battlefield, to help them out. And that's what we like to say here in the United States. A NineLine is a call for help and a call to action. We try to reinvigorate patriotism in the truest sense of the word, right? And we say that is to do things for your countrymen without expecting anything in return. Be the right thing because it's the right thing and no one's looking. That's what we try to teach our children. That's what we try to live by. That's why the NineLine Foundation, we do help severely wounded veterans by building wheelchair accessible homes. And we also have built dozens of tiny homes for homeless veterans, and work with other charities. We have no paid employees. Everything is volunteer. That way, any dollar that comes in goes directly toward the initiatives.
I just can't applaud you enough. So that's the NineLine Foundation. We've got NineLine Apparel, which I was checking out this morning. I mean, you guys have a ton of stuff on there, but I love that it's all, everyone's going crazy about these tariffs. And, I love that there are companies committed to manufacturing here in America, and employing our people. And in particular, with a soft spot for veterans, I just love this. What is the biggest, in your mind, problem facing veterans right now?
Facing veterans right now.
I mean, I know that we hear about suicides, which is, and I wonder how you deal with PTSD, given what you've seen. And
I try to do things different than my grandfather. Right? Like, he never talked about anything. I didn't know about anything he did until after he passed. Going through records. He was very quiet. He drank a lot. Very nice man, but he kept it inside. And a lot of my friends who do that, they do succumb to awful living life, and it's horrible. And it's happened here on this facility, with friends of ours. And I don't want to go and find any more of my friends lifeless bodies and have to explain to their loved ones, or try to explain why they did things, because there is no real explanation. Right? I'd say to anyone out there, that is that selfless there, and you're not selfless. These are selfless individuals. They are individuals like myself that I have a hard time asking for help. Right? I have a hard time trying to take care of myself before others. I was pushed by my employees, friends, family to go take a week and inject myself with stem cells. I just couldn't find the time, but I had to make the time, because I didn't want to be taking home codes just so I could go to sleep at night. And I think asking for help is the first step, and then taking those active measures, advice and insight of individuals have been there before and on how to cope with things and not take things out on loved ones. That is, one of the hardest things as we get further away from the war. Individuals who lost their limbs. I think they're realizing that, and I don't want to say it in general, right? But for the most part, I'd say that we've been out of conflict for a while, that the American public has moved on. And, there's not that same level of financial support and other support out there because the proximity, the recency of ending engagement in Iraq and Afghanistan is over. It hasn't got to the point of, Vietnam era levels of negative sentiment. I just think it's more ambiguity. Good job, thank you for serving for almost 20 years in conflict. And I think that does mentally affect individuals, especially those who get reminded every day, when they're hopping in their wheelchair, that they have no legs. So if you do have an opportunity to, it's not necessarily thanking people for their service. And not want to say that the false platitudes. It's for just getting to know people, finding out what they're enjoying doing now. Right? My friends who are some incredible inspirations, when they lost their legs and arms, they told their doctors, don't tell me what I can't do, tell me what I can do. Tell me about adaptive sports, right? So try to, get to know those individuals that might be struggling and find the things that they're interested in. Encourage them to take care of themselves. Encourage them to talk to therapists, right? I think years ago I'd be embarrassed to say, but I talk to therapists on a weekly basis. And it's about not just getting stuff, but it's about, life, right? I wasn't always around for my, kids. I was definitely never around for my ex-wife. I was just gone for years at a time. I'd come back and feel different taller. I'd come back and I'd be sleeping in between the caskets and land and, be having dinner later on that evening. And did not want to talk about it. I'll just sit in the chair and stare at TV and drink a bottle of liquor. That's my story. But I don't think I'm alone in that, right? Where you don't feel that you have that same connection. You get numb to life. And it's taken me years to open up, to talk, to be vulnerable. And that's kind of scary for a lot of people.
It can be, because sometimes it means reliving things that really hurt. But I think ultimately it is healing in a way that bottling it in can't heal. It just postpones. And I'm so impressed by you, Tyler. NineLine Apparel is where you can find all of his good works and the works of his company. Tyler, I would love to have you back. There is so much I could talk to you about, and I could just sit here and listen to your stories. I think it's really important that people don't forget what the sacrifices are by these veterans, even though, we're quote unquote out of Afghanistan. And that's a whole nother story we could go into, Tyler. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on so many things. I hope you'll come back.
No, I'd love to. We're talking about disruptors and obviously things like recent decisions on changing our importation laws, taxes, tariffs, who we want to continue to double down and grow relationships with that are true partners, and identifying individuals like China who are we're not our partners, we're not our friends. I think that's what I'm most excited about moving forward in the future. And I see a lot more support and awesome initiatives with Doug Collins. I see a lot of great things that Rubio and the president, have decided that they're going to continue to move forward with what they say they're going to do and start putting things in action. And they really do help businesses like mine, small businesses, continue to grow and compete, where the last 4 years we're stagnant and declining because of these decisions. So I'm very excited and optimistic for the future. I'd love to come back and talk about,
let's do it. We're going to do it because we're going to see how all of this shakes out here. But I am, for years, Tyler, I will tell you, I have refused to buy any clothing made in China. And it's tough to do because so many things are made in China. You can't go into a store. You've really got to be picky. But this is my commitment, my small little way of trying to live my values. And I agree. China's not our friend. And they're making so much of our stuff. And we can find it made here, and you can go to NineLine Apparel and find it. Tyler Merritt is the CEO, and we are going to have him back. I can't wait to talk to you more. Thanks so much for taking the time. Folks, I always end the podcast by saying, be brave, do good. Here is Tyler, a perfect example of all of those things, and we're going to have him again. Tyler, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, you can keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. It's an email that brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.